Hello, everyone. I'm Thomas Wasson with FreightWaves. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're talking with the folks at Avalara, and one of the big topics today is using predictive analytics to stay ahead of global trade disruptions. If anyone's been living under a rock, there has been tons of disruptions to global trade with the current administration over the past coming up now over 10 months. And so it's been a very challenging situation for both participants, shippers, and everyone in the supply chain on how to act and figure out what to do about it. So I'm very excited to be welcoming our guest, Patrick Frith. He's Senior Director of Growth and Cross-Border at Avalara. We're going to dive into kind of what we're dealing with uncertainty, kind of what shippers need to know about these changes, de minimis, automation, AI. We have it all. So I'm super excited to be welcoming Patrick. Patrick, pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, it's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
And before we dive into the questions, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Avalara.
Yeah, sure. Well, for the past 8 years, I've been here with Avalara, and I'm responsible for solving our customer and our partners' cross-border headaches. So when moving anything from one country to another, it's complicated. There's compliance, there's delays, there's holdups, there's barriers, there's hurdles, there's pitfalls. And my responsibility is to help our customers and partners navigate those pitfalls to ensure that they have a smooth and compliant transit from one country to another. So that's what I do here. I do it every day. I've been doing it my whole life in other capacities, and it's in my DNA.
And talk about having to deal and jump through hoops. Before the recent tariff-related disruptions, it was a real pain in the neck having to deal with the myriad forms of compliance to ship internationally and cross-border. So let's talk about how tariff uncertainty has kind of really impacted 2025 outside of what we normally had to deal with, which could at times feel a little chaotic.
Right. Well, I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, and I can tell you, what's happened in the last 10 months in this year has been the most chaotic, turbulent time in my time in cross-border. I've worked for a number of global carriers, now obviously with Avalara, so I've seen it all. And I recently was speaking at an event in Amsterdam, and I got asked, how does this compare with Brexit? Because of course, in living memory, Brexit was, and there is an enormous difference. It's not even, you can't even compare the two. Such an enormous difference. Brexit happened over a period of years, I think about 3 years. Everybody knew what was happening. It was all planned. It was all staged. There was a few delays along the way, but everyone was prepared. And even on the day, there was still a bit of chaos. This is Brexit on steroids. Things are changing every day. Deadlines and implementations are happening not in years, but in days. Okay, so changes are happening, which is leaving the cross-border community in absolute chaos, right? So this is a huge difference, and I've never seen anything like it. It's unprecedented.
And you brought up such a great point with Brexit, because that did feel like it was like a divorce, but it was telegraphed. There were benchmarks. It was very much slow and deliberate. You could figure out a finality. Talk about, because of how uncertain things are now, it was a kind of like whiplash, or as you're talking to these shippers and these folks at conferences, how the heck do you even make a plan in this kind of environment?
So difficult, and that's been the problem from day one. So if we go back to February when all this started, the current administration here in the US, I'm based in the US, so I live and breathe it every day. The current administration, laid the stall out. Okay, the backdrop was fentanyl, illegal immigration on the southern border, and counterfeit goods. Okay, and then this led to the snowball that we've seen since February. So, we went from February into March. There was China was in the crosshairs at the very start with the punitive duties that were being applied. Then we had the Rose Garden event on the 2nd of April, where 51 countries got reciprocal tariffs. Then we went through a period of trade negotiations between some countries. The UK came out first. Starmer, when he had attended the G7, I think it was, in Canada, they signed that first trade deal, US and the UK. Then a number of them followed thereafter. There are still many outstanding. So China, that's outstanding. That's on pause. Mexico, on pause. And a few other countries as well, which are currently under negotiation. So Canada's in a bit of a turmoil at the moment as we stand here today. So it's not over, but the dust is beginning to settle. And for the last 10 months, we've had organizations doing all sorts of different things to stay ahead of this. We've seen shippers, merchants, marketplaces suspend the US market. We've seen all sorts of reactions, because companies have got different strategies, right? And the US is important to everybody. It's a big market, but it's of varying importance to different organizations. So we've seen a lot. We speak to customers and partners every day. So we've seen a whole range of strategies and approaches to this.
And let's dive into that, how some of these global shippers are reacting to these changes. It kind of reminds me of an Eddie Izzard sketch where it's like cake or death. And so I've got some customers I got to speak with say that they have front-loaded, they shipped it in advance, they're biting the bullet. I've heard from other global shippers saying, well, we're going to wait. Maybe the tariffs will be in a better spot, or maybe we're going to have a pause. What are some of the things that you're hearing in terms of these shipper reactions? Has there emerged a strategy to kind of help hedge it, or is it really just completely dependent upon their current needs and priorities?
So I would say we can bucket those strategies in a moment, but I would say the first response was, deer in a headlight. Okay, it was freeze. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Okay, let's watch the news cycles tomorrow. Let's see what happens. Let's see what gets put on hold. Let's see what's going ahead. So there was a period of time from April to I would say early summer where organizations were just waiting to see. Then we got a few delays, pauses in the implementation of higher tariffs. And that's when we saw a lot of organizations, you just mentioned it there, building inventory to absorb those short-term headwinds. So they were using that pause. It was a 90-day pause, if you remember, up until sort of midsummer. They were using that to bring in volume into the US and warehouse it. So they were capturing the paused tariffs, as well as having inventory at their disposal here on shelves in the US. So that was the first action. But that window is closing. It's closing rapidly. So the China pause is up in about 2 weeks. The Mexico pause is up in about a week. So that window now is pretty much shut. So we're seeing now other strategies emerge. And the dust is settling. A lot of countries now have got fixed duty rates because they've negotiated them in with some trade deals. As I mentioned, I think there's been about 15 trade deals over the last couple of months. So the dust is settling. So what we're seeing now is organizations beginning to, we call it tariff engineering, and we support that. We've got technology that helps do that. So what they're doing is they're diversifying their sources of supply. So if you were ordering your raw materials, your widgets, your whatever it was, your finished goods from a certain country which is now suffering from a punitive duty, the question they're asking themselves is, can I order that same raw material, that same widget, that same finished good from another country which has got preferential rates in comparison and import it from there, therefore reducing my duty liability? So this is an exercise that a lot of organizations have gone through. I'll give you an example. Nike, sports manufacturer, you know these guys. They were facing a $1 billion annual tariff burden this year because 16% of their footwear for the US market was being imported from China. So what they did, tariff engineering, they looked around and they're aiming to cut that to single-digit percentage in 2026, therefore relieving themselves of that duty burden. So that's what we call tariff. So we're seeing that a lot. Okay, we're also seeing organizations ensuring that their product details, their HS classifications, their countries of origin are absolutely 100% compliant because that is under the microscope. So there's a lot of activity, there has been over the last few months, making sure their product catalogs are compliant with the things that I just mentioned just now, to make sure that when it does enter the country, it goes through as frictionless as possible. Okay, so that less resistance when it comes in. So no delays, no abandoned shipments, no return to origin, this sort of thing. So they're making sure that those details are absolute. And how are they doing that? This is just a little factoid here.
Yeah.
Last year, there was US tariff changes. There was about 50,000 made during the course of the year. Quite a normal year. There's changes happen every day, okay? Minor changes here and there. So far, year to date, over 600,000 have been made. So that is, if you try and get your head around the number of changes and how fast they're happening, you're just going to get yourself in a complete muddle. And so what we're seeing is organizations now using technology, compliance tools to make sure their product catalogs are up to date, the HS codes are up to date, they're anticipating the duty before the product arrives into the US. So we're seeing a move from traditionally a manual activity of product compliance, somebody on a spreadsheet in the corner of the office making sure the products are compliant. That's gone because they couldn't keep up with the changes. That's gone, and that's been replaced now with automation. It's technology, because it's the only way you can keep on top of these things. Things change. 1 minute past midnight, duties change. The impact is enormous. So you've got to stay on top of that, and they're using technology to do that. So those are the sort of buckets that we're seeing. Also, you've got to remember now, de minimis, and I know we're going to come on to that in a moment. That, in my opinion, was just as big as these tariff changes. The US de minimis, $800, has been since the 2016, the Obama administration. They bumped it up from 200 to 800. So we've had these years, these wonderful years of trade facilitation at $800. That got eliminated. So all these duty-free clearances, Type 86 and so on and so forth, they're all gone. So now it's Type 1, it's Type 11, one's formal, one's informal, and you need additional information for those clearances. So we're seeing organizations now switch from what was the de minimis, below de minimis clearance, no duty, to different types of clearances, which means skilling up. More, you need more information, you need more knowledge to be able to execute these clearances. So I think, if we were to put it into the buckets, that's what we've seen. We've seen that over the last 4 or 5 months.
I mean, that's quite a bit. You read my mind. My next question was going to be the impact of the ending of de minimis on the products. But it does allude to that second point that you brought up, which is with all of these changes, de minimis, tariff uncertainty, switching strategies, we need to have automation and AI. You touched on that. I want to dive into that real quick while we have a little bit of time left. Talk about how this automation and AI and these platforms can help now cover it, because it does feel like it's a little overwhelming if I had to assign some people to this.
Oh, for sure. So, you got to think about big organizations, and we support a lot of the marketplaces. They've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of listings, product listings. And these now are pouring into the US continues to consume. Let's not forget that it's still an enormous market, despite the difficulties that have emerged. It's still an enormous market that consumes. So we've got organizations around us, everywhere around us, in other parts of the world, who are continually sending these products into the US, but now they need further information. So your catalog now needs HS codes. Okay, the US has got 10 digits. Every product has got a HS code, and that is inextricably linked to the duty that will be paid on that product when it enters into the US. Now, with all these Section 232, Section 301, reciprocal country of origin, that varies the amount of duty. So if you don't know your HS code, you have no idea what your duty is going to be when it arrives into the country. So it's the Rosetta Stone is determining the HS code. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, you can pick up the manual. There's about 21,000 HS codes for the US. You can pick up the manual and you can classify all those products. Pretty simple if you've got 1 or 2 products. But if you have got a multitude of products coming into the US, doing that manually is just an impossible task. You're never going to stay ahead of it. So we actually at Avalara have technology where you can enter your product information, and using AI, we we classify millions every single month products from a variety of governments, retailers, so on and so forth. So we're able to, with AI, we're able to recognize what's being entered. We do it in a number of languages as well. What's being entered, and then deduce the accurate HS code. And therefore, knowing the country of origin, knowing the declared value, knowing the HS code, bingo, you've got your duty calculation. And this all happens in real time. So this relieves organizations of the burden, the manual burden. Some would have to hire armies of people to be able to do this. You can just now do it with with technology. So that's how technology is helping solve this problem. It's essentially we're reacting to executive orders. Executive orders are the law, and laws have to be respected in every sovereign country. So we're using technology to help organizations anticipate what they will need to be paying in terms of duties and taxes when their products hit the shores of the US.
And we got a little under 2 minutes left. Been amazing information so far. Looking ahead, lessons to be applied for 2026. We've talked about technology staying very much flexible. Do you have any other final thoughts for folks who are trying to navigate this as we're approaching the new year?
Sure. I would say there's going to be more change coming. We haven't come to the end of this yet. There's more change coming. Things are not going to settle down all of a sudden before the end of the year. So go into 2026 anticipating change. I think we're going to see more changes in clearance. We're going to see more changes in tariffs. We also already know there's going to be a review and revision of the HS codes going into 2026. So make sure your organization is nimble. Make sure you're open to a number of these strategies. The tariff engineering I mentioned earlier on, sourcing from elsewhere. Avalara have got tools that can help you compare countries, your widgets, your raw materials, so on and so forth, to compare them country to country. Stay nimble, use technology, because you could be up to date manually today, but tomorrow morning at 1 minute past midnight, you're out of date. But technology allows you to stay current in real time so that you're making the right decisions based on the products that you're importing into the US.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for hopping on. A lot of very helpful information as well. I feel like we could definitely go for a whole other hour, but thank you so much for giving me some of your time. If folks want to learn more about Avalara, check out this technology and see how it can help their day-to-day. What's the best way to get more info?
Avalara.com. You can see we've got a whole industry in Avalara.com for cross-border. All our solutions are presented in cross-border, and there's the useful buttons there to contact a member of the team who'll get back in touch with you and walk you through the solutions that we have to solve the headaches and the problems that you're experiencing. So Avalara.com and cross-border.
Perfect. Patrick, thank you so much. We'll definitely catch up again soon. That's going to be a wrap for this special interview here at FreightWaves. Thank you all so much for listening. Check out the folks at Avalara as well. We'll be back again, and I'll see you again soon.